Until scientists come up with the type of matter transporters which are used to move people from one place to the other in science fiction, planes will remain the fastest and most efficient way to travel long distances in short spaces of time. All of the world's major cities have airports, offering flights from one side of the world to another. Not all planes end their lives in an airport hangar though. Some of them land in strange locations, before becoming the type of abandoned curiosity you're about to see in this video. Many planes took to the skies during the Second World War and never returned to base, and even now, 70 years later, some of those lost planes have never been found. When they do show up, they can be in the most expected locations. Recently, a ship examining the bottom of the Kirk Strait in Cape Tuzla in preparation for the building of the Kirk Bridge found one such example, a crashed IL-2 plane, containing several of the personal effects of the long-lost pilot. The IL-2 was built in July 1943, but never returned after being sent into battle on November 1st of the same year. Based on the state of the plane, it went down fighting. Almost all of the ammunition had been fired. Although badly damaged from so many years in the water, the pilot's life jacket was recovered, along with his Order of the Red Banner. The possessions belonged to Alexander Udorov, who saw battle 14 times that year before apparently losing his final battle in the skies above Crimea. Based on the evidence, it would seem he flew his final mission without a parachute, in accordance with the Black Sea Fleet's motto, "Victory or Death." Ever since a Malaysian Airlines Boeing 777 airliner went missing in 2014, professional and amateur research teams have been desperately trying to find out what happened to it. Now, a team of amateur sleuths scouring Google Earth believe they've found it somewhere impossible: the jungle of Cambodia. Images taken from Google Earth clearly show a plane of roughly the right proportions to be the missing Boeing has landed in the jungle, but officials are refusing to investigate the possibility, preferring to believe the best guess of experts, which is that it plunged into the Indian Ocean. The plane we can see in these pictures, which were taken in 2018, is on the border of Pursat and Kampong Spu in Cambodia. If experts are right, and this isn't the missing Malaysian plane, then we're left to wonder whose plane it is, and how it came to be here. One of the more newsworthy incidents of a plane going missing and then being found again occurred early in 2019 with the Emiliano Sala tragedy. Sala, a professional footballer, had signed for Cardiff City in the English Premier League from the French side Nantes. Sala was flying back to Cardiff after saying goodbye to his former teammates when the Piper Malibu light aircraft he was traveling on disappeared. After a well-publicized and extensive search, a private investigation team located the plane at the bottom of the English Channel. The plane was mostly intact, with its identification number visible to cameras on an automated vehicle, which was sent down into the water to take a closer look. Sadly, it was immediately apparent that Sala had not survived the incident. The exact cause of the crash is still being investigated, although Sala had sent messages to friends just before he went missing, indicating that the plane was making strange noises and that he was afraid. It later transpired that the pilot taking Sala back to Cardiff wasn't qualified to fly the plane at night. At one point in time, the Donuslav airfield was the focus of anti-submarine aviation in the Crimea area. It was from here that the Black Sea Fleet conducted their operations. Donuslav had a unique hydro strip that allowed the B12 Seaplane to enter directly into the lake from a concrete tank, backed up by 3 support boats at the end of a pier. Today, it lies abandoned and partially ruined, with the runway dismantled during the early 1990s. The BE-12 was years ahead of its time, a Soviet-era amphibious aircraft powered by a turboprop, and intended for maritime patrol duties, including destroying enemy submarines. They first flew in 1960 and stayed in production until 1973. There are even a few models still in service today. Such is their enduring appeal and ability. The one you'll find at its old Donuslav base will never fly again though. Instead, it's been mounted on a pedestal as a monument to its era and the ingenuity of those who invented it. There's been talk of a sanatorium being built here, but there's no sign of development. Until that day, the BE-12 will remain on its pedestal, as if it were still somehow on guard. There's an old British Avro Shackleton rusting away in a field in Long Marston Airfield in England, and it's a testament to what happens when people close museums without thinking about what happens to the exhibits. There was once an aviation museum on the land here, but when it shut down, no new home could be found for the massive Avro Shackleton, which has the resignation number WR985. The Ministry of Defense sold the plane in 1989 and has no desire to take it back. So this proud old plane, which first flew in 1951 and was used as an anti-submarine attack role, is rusting away in the open air. Planes of this type remained in service for over 40 years in both Britain and South Africa, acting as a troop transport in their later life. The only place this poor old plane will be transported to in the near future is the Scrapyard. For nearly 60 years, Hellinikon Airport was the only airport in Athens, the capital city of Greece. In 2001, Greece decided it needed a smarter and more modern airport before it hosted the Olympic Games in 2004. And so Hellinikon was closed down and abandoned. Apparently, someone forgot to take some of the planes with them before they left. 6 airliners still stand on the runways of Hellinikon, including the Olympic Airlines Boeing 747-200, which was once the pride of the entire fleet. Aristotle Onassis himself ordered the purchase of the Airbus back in 1973, and for 37 years after that, it held the world record for the highest passenger numbers in the world. The double-decker vessel had an ancient Greek theme, with each compartment inside named after a part of the Acropolis. This plane has flown in the skies above every populated continent on Earth, and now it's permanently grounded at a forgotten airport. The land was recently sold to investors who want to build a luxury holiday resort here. What will happen to the planes is unknown. When the airline Transaero was declared bankrupt towards the end of 2017, all of its assets were put up for auction to the highest bidder. You'd have thought there would be no problem finding buyers for 3 Boeing airliners, but nobody bid on them when the opportunity arrived in March 2019. With no buyer emerging, the Boeing 767-200 and a pair of Boeing 737-300 planes are gathering dust and rust in Vnukovo and Domodedovo. They were expected to fetch $7.8 million. They may end up making nothing at all. The planes are available either as whole aircraft or as parts, but their desirability as whole aircraft may be more limited than first thought. After not being flown for several years, they would now have to undergo stringent and expensive tests to demonstrate that they are still airworthy. As they are older planes, there's no guarantee they'll pass those tests. Their worth as parts is also debatable due to their age. They're now back on sale with an offer price of $7 million. The policy of abandoning unwanted planes behind an airport in Kazan has backfired a little for the local authorities there, who have had to erect a fence to keep sightseers and photo opportunists out of their plane graveyard. A set of 3 old Tu-154M planes, along with an Il-62M, had become the perfect backdrop for people looking to boost their social media presence with a dramatic photo shoot. The planes have stood in the airport grounds for more than 6 years after a dispute between Tatfond Bank head Robert Musin and 2 former business partners of his, who sued him, leading to his private planes being impounded. At the peak of their popularity, the planes were being visited by dozens of people every day, ranging from bands looking for a moody and industrial background to glamour models wanting to make themselves look edgy and alternative. Even though the fences are now up, the planes are still there, rotting away. For years now, an old Russian cargo plane has been baking in the desert heat of al-Quwain. The plane clearly has an interesting past. It has the words Palma Beach Hotel printed along its fuselage, but it hasn't flown anywhere or welcomed guests since 1999. The IL-76 was built in 1975 for the use of the Soviet Air Force, serving until the Soviet Union collapsed almost 20 years later, then changed hands several times until it was registered for the final time to Centrafrican Airlines in 1998. That particular airline was once connected to notorious arms dealer Victor Bout, who was known to use his planes to transport weapons to Africa from the Middle East illegally. He's now serving a 25-year prison term in the USA, which may go some way to explaining why his old plane is now immobile. Some locals with a little knowledge of the situation say that it was sold for scrap metal, but after the internal components were removed, it was decided the fuselage has no value, and so it was dragged to the desert and forgotten. The M17 Stratosphere was a plane designed to shoot down high-tech American drifting balloons, which once conducted reconnaissance at the borders of the old USSR. Now it's a relic, and one of the planes lays in pieces in fields near the Monino Museum. The planes, designed by designer Myasishev, were tasked with destroying balloons at high altitude and collecting any available intelligence from the wreckage. Before their invention, the only way to get rid of such a balloon was to shoot it down with a surface-to-air missile, which was both risky and expensive. The first test model was a failure and killed its pilot as the huge wings failed to behave as predicted during landing. The second test model, built in 1982, got it right. Unfortunately, by that time, it was deemed to be surplus to requirements. It conducted a few experiments before funding was withdrawn, components were stripped out, the wings were torn off, and it was junked as the museum. What a waste. The wreck of the Pegasus in Antarctica was one so famous that the nearby airfield was named after it. Although it's been so well preserved by the ice that it looks like it crash-landed there yesterday, the C-121 Lockheed Constellation plane known as Pegasus has been half buried in the snow since October 8, 1970. The plane and her pilots were caught in a vicious storm above the airfield that day, with a blizzard of snow reducing visibility down to zero, and wind so strong that it was ripping away scraps of the outer shell. It didn't stand a chance. Pegasus crash-landed on the short runway and then slid across the ice until it struck a thick pile of snow, where it came to a halt. All 80 passengers somehow survived. The plane wasn't so lucky. It was beyond salvage, and so has become something of a landmark in the area. Visitors to McMurdo Station like to walk up to the plane, dusting off the layers of snow that fall on top of it for long enough to take a few photos, or even write their name on the body so other people can see who's been before them. Of all the planes to have been lost and abandoned over the decades, Swamp Ghost is one of the most legendary. Swamp Ghost is the nickname given to a Boeing B-17E Flying Fortress, which was abandoned during wartime, and then spent the next 30 years forgotten in a swamp. Captain Frederick C. Eaton was piloting the plane in 1942 when it was involved in a battle above the skies of Papua New Guinea. Eaton shook off his attackers but ran out of fuel and had to ditch the plane in a remote and uninhabited area. He and his crew survived, but the Flying Fortress sank into swampland. It wasn't until 1972 that it was spotted by a passing helicopter, and 2006 before its location could be confirmed with photographic evidence by investigators, who salvaged it and moved it to Ley Wharf. A further 4 years passed before the historic wreck was formally permitted to be imported back to the United States of America. Swamp Ghost is now permanently exhibited at the Pacific Aviation Museum at Pearl Harbor. She's the only intact B-17 Flying Fortress left in the world. She's earned her retirement. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.